Call the work session of the mayor and council for the city of Snellville, Georgia for Monday, April 22nd, 2019 to order. Hope everybody either filed their taxes or filed an extension. I'm breathing a sigh of relief and catching up on some sleep, so. First, we'll go through our regular business meeting and public hearing agenda. If anybody has any questions. I've got Assistant Police Chief Greg Perry for the invocation, Mr. Joe Wilson for the pledge. Got a ceremonial matter with the proclamation, and then also we'll do a swearing in for Brandon Abbey. But that will add to the, I can just throw that on, right? Because it's before the approval of the agenda.
Yes.
It's just a ceremonial matter, so that's good.
I think that's within your discretion.
Okay, got the minutes.
She has discretion? Lie.
And then Kathy Emanuel's gonna give the stat report. Kelly? Eric, do you know if someone will be here from the youth commission? Okay.
Christie, do you know?
Yeah, Esther Nadewa, Ndewa, same young ladies last time.
Esther, spell the last name again.
Ndewa.
And then when we get to the approval of the agenda, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but need to amend the agenda for public hearing item E, which is the first reading. Oh, we're off here. A, B, public hearing, item D should be C.
What did you say? D should be C? What did you say?
Well, hang on, because I just noticed the public hearing items are misnumbered.
Oh,
So that will be item D. It's the first reading on the extended stay hotels. We're gonna remove that from the agenda
okay.
and put it on our May 13th agenda for the second reading. We're just trying to get our meetings to line up
Yep.
with Planning Commission and their first and second readings. Just do that item A, B, and then it went to D.
I think that's just yours. They're right on here when I
Yeah.
formatted yours. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm confusing everybody then.
I'm sorry.
It is item D.
It is, yeah.
So we're moving D
We're
to.
removing D, or moving it
moving it to
to.
May 13th.
May 13th.
First
Yes.
reading to May
First
13th.
reading.
Okay, so we don't have an E. So we just have an A, B, and C.
Right.
Okay,
And
cool.
D.
And who?
And D. We're
No, but
postponing
we're
D.
well, it is temporary for now.
Handle
Moving
Don't mess
D.
with me, Dave.
Moving D.
What
We're
else do we
moving
do?
D for Dave. Okay,
Okay.
cool.
Okay, so then under public hearing, we have a second reading on the town center flat use standards. Anyone have any questions of Jason on that before we get to the meeting? No.
Nope.
Then we have second reading on the sign ordinance clarifications. I did talk with Jason, and just if anybody has any questions or concerns too. My concern was if we were making changes to the electronic signs, and where we are adding them in a few other places, like on the menu boards and things, we're not making any kind of real changes. We allow them already, and the brightness and the number of times they flash and how often they flash is regulated, and none of that is changing. Did I say that right?
Yeah, time and temperature is the only thing that's really worth allowing.
For 5 seconds.
Correct.
I saw
Yeah, because he did bring up a good point, that if you can only flash it, change it every 15 minutes, the sign's gonna be wrong for 14 minutes. Before it catches back up. So anybody else have any questions on the sign? changes. Then we have item E, which is a second reading on Wendover Housing Partners rezoning.
Would that be C?
C.
C, yeah.
What did I say?
All right.
E.
You said E.
Well, I have D marked out and I still said it, so. Item C, yes. Anyone with questions for Jason?
I have a couple questions, Jason. One of my concerns is, one of the variances is to reduce the required parking on the site from 2 spaces per unit to 1 space per unit. Now, this is an independent living facility, correct?
It is. It's
So a lot of these residents will likely have a car. That doesn't seem to allow any space for visiting friends, family.
Well,
Or
but-
2 cars.
Yeah,
Or
Husband
2
and wife
cars.
could both drive. Yeah.
Yeah,
but a lot of times when you get into these developments too, there's a population that don't even own a car. So what was requested and approved before for, the one we did over on Crestview, the one we did at the Sheridan, were all 1 per. So typically that's the industry standard a lot, even for regular multifamily where there's a lot more cars. So what we try to do in the town center, and because this is in the town center, is make sure that you're reducing asphalt where you can, and typically, a 1-to-1 is pretty good. It's industry standard. That's why we've recommended approval for it. Plus, if there was some overflow issues during peak times, there's a huge parking lot on the church, and then there's the ability
that's
to
true.
Plenty
enter
of parking.
into
That's
a
true.
public, or, a recorded agreement for up to 25% of those spaces if that's something that comes up. But typically, 1-to-1 is good for those type of uses, and that's usually the standard, because you're gonna get a lot that do drive, but then you're gonna get a good amount that don't, that are relying on shuttles and public transit. And that's why we want them closer to the town center and stuff, so, as you get older, the need for the automobile kind of wanes away.
They're 55 and up.
Yeah, but that's typically not the
I still got
average
kids
age.
at home.
That's not the average age of a development like that, though. That's just the bottom. I mean, typically, it's a little higher.
Okay. Are we handling all our questions on this here?
I mean,
I
if you
have,
want to.
I
or
have
you-
one more.
You can wait
Please.
till the,
Yeah. On the condition where we say that the dumpsters have to be serviced no earlier than 9 AM, no later than 6 PM, based on some problems we've had recently, should we include other deliveries, including like food deliveries, supplies?
Well, I think the concern with the other deliveries would be in more of maybe a residential setting, which we don't have necessarily over there. I guess. It would
remember,
be-
you don't have a dining room here. So there's not gonna be
That's
food
true.
deliveries.
Yeah,
This
that's
is,
But
this
there
is
will be
individual, it's an apartment.
supplies, yeah.
Yeah,
It's an
no.
apartment complex. It's gonna be UPS, Amazon deliveries.
The worst thing will be the dumpsters, for sure. We did that, that came up during the process, and basically they were just trying to protect the residents of that development. They're not gonna be any Cisco trucks or anything like that. I mean, they're gonna have maybe some staff vehicles. The worst would be maybe the need for medical care, and that'd be the fire truck and the ambulance, but not necessarily, I don't know that there would be a lot of supplies. But, I mean, if you wanna add it in, I don't think it hurts. It doesn't hurt anything.
Going back to that parking, does that include parking for staff?
Yeah, there's
The one
minimal
per
staff, there's just,
space.
there's like a.
One
I
per
don't know,
unit.
yeah,
Leasing
both.
agent.
Yeah,
and-
it's not a
Okay.
program center, so it's just like if you were to go to the leasing office somewhere else, there may be one person there during times, but it's not manned 24 hours, I don't believe.
Okay.
Oh, no, there is one, I think they do have one live-in there. And I don't.
Like an RA?
Yeah, I think they just to keep an eye on the property, which is a good practice, I think, but I think it's just one person. Well, you can ask them, but.
Some
no,
people
that we
work the
didn't have with
defibrillator.
it.
Okay, okay.
I'm tired of being a resident.
The 2 proposed dumpster locations both front on the only street that this is fronting on, which is kind of counter to everything that we've ever done.
Yeah.
So The development across the street, the commercial, actually, their dumpsters back in the back away from the road frontage. Not that that's a very highly trafficked road,
Well,
and
that was-
probably never will be, but,
That's kind of where we came from, and if you look at the orientation of the building, you could say that it fronts Henry Clower and what they refer to as Wesley Way more than Pate. And given Pate's orientation now, until it comes through and hits Lenore Church, is most likely what we consider to be like the secondary or the alley for the rear. So rather than push them out towards the church, which nobody really wants to see,
Right.
and kind of have them still kind of shielded by the building, you know, along Pate, which will probably, if it was to continue to grow and block out, would be the backside of the building. So, like you said, the only public street outside of Henry Flower is that, and this is counter, you know, intuitive to what we normally do, but given the circumstance, you know, that's really the best place for it to go. Then the church people don't see it every day, and the only people that are ever gonna really see it is somebody that comes down to that cul-de-sac.
okay, and we've got, looks like less than 0 lot line in the northeast corner. I assume that's not an issue since it's,
No, and that's kind of a result of the town center, and I was kind of going over that with some other
Okay.
questions. You know,
That's
you
what I
push it
thought.
up, but, and then again, this is a unique situation too, because that drive is not a public right of way. So, you know, you want to push it up, you want to push it forward, you can't even really get it all the way to Henry Clower because of the pond.
right,
But as far as the code goes, trying to fit this kind of development to the town center, you know, we were happy with that. I understand there may be a little bit of room for some flexibility too, because the church to get comfortable with maybe setting it back a little bit, that we can kind of handle during the site development process, that's fine. But nothing as far as like grossly changing the orientation, but we can shift it or
okay.
move it around.
The floor plan that's included in this shows a trash chute on every floor that goes down to a waste room, and then we also have 2 dumpsters. So I'm just kind of curious why we have, it's a great way to do it, but the floor plan's totally changed. The original plan had community rooms and movie theaters and all sorts of stuff, and now it's, there's no indication what the interior is. So that just left me with more questions.
Yeah, and I would just kind of refer you to the applicant
Okay.
at that part. And what we had is when they originally submit the U building, it ended up not really working on the site as well. That was a building I believe that they had built before.
Mhm.
So all those amenity areas had already been mapped out and basically designed. And now, when they changed it, you know, a lot of this stuff is transferable, but the line, you know, the linear shape changes and all that stuff gets displaced. So I don't believe those building plans exist yet outside
Okay.
of what you saw. So I don't know about the trash chutes.
Okay, I mean, again, it just, things like that make me ask questions.
You can ask.
And there's no landscape plan.
Well, and that, we discussed this too, so in the
Sorry.
past, when we had variances, we wanna see a landscape plan to see how those variances impact the ordinance. And in this case, they're not asking for any variances, so it's not a requirement of the plan. Basically, when they submit their, LDP plans or construction drawings, they'll have to abide by the code, whatever that is.
Okay.
So, at that point in time, there won't be any room for allowances outside of the normal administrative variance process, and it basically makes it designed to our code, so
Gotcha.
we don't, you know, it just
I'm-
saves you a
I'm-
step.
I'm just used to Marin Council having concrete site plans that are
We got it.
put into the record, and that's what we built.
Well, the code is just
Code
as
is
strong.
right.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
that's what we were talking about, is we're used to having all of that, but we got all of that because there were always so many variances that
Okay.
people had to request because our ordinance wasn't up to date. So it's a little scarier that we're not getting all of that now, but they still have to meet all the ordinances then.
Right, which you just adopted about 18 months ago, and then we're getting a new landscaping code, so we'll
Right.
get to vet that too by the time this thing.
And
comes
we'll
out.
see all of that before they build.
Yeah, and there's always that, we're gonna look at it.
And that brings up the question, are they under the code as we have it now? Or will they, if the construction doesn't take place until the new code is in
This-
place, do they fall under the new
It's
code?
submittal of the plans, so there's a certain time period and change in the provision of the codes. I believe it's 180 days, might be 90. It's dictated within the
Okay.
code that they have to submit and have approved, and then they only have a certain period of time that they have to build at that point. I would foresee they'll be in the second one, but our landscape code now is good, even if.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
The new one just allows a little more flexibility with bigger trees and stuff. so.
Well, and it's really a matter of fairness for the applicant because they need to know what they're gonna be bound to.
Yeah.
And if,
It's
you
not-
know, we change the code
Right.
and I wanna know, and I'm sure they will wanna know.
Yeah, it's not fundamentally like
Okay.
hugely different. Than you.
Oh, we don't know, because they haven't been adopted.
Well,
Only fruit trees from now on. Okay, I think I'm done.
We have two separate motions, one for the RZ and one for the SUP.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Okay, then item D, ZOA 19-03, first reading, that's the one that we will be amending the agenda to remove, and that will come back up on May 13th. Old business, the Planning Commission post nomination, I'm gonna postpone until May 13th. Under new business, we have property purchase for 2440 Wisteria Drive.
That is a purchase agreement for the SunTrust property on Wisteria, and the bank has signed the document and accepted our changes, so we need to act publicly
Do it in public
to
vote.
move forward.
Just doing the hockey pound on the glass thing.
What's that?
Hockey pounding on the glass.
What, you wanna fight?
No, no,
Oh,
that was a good thing.
This packet's the same as it was in our agenda packet. You just handed this one out. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the blanks were filled in.
Going back to that old business, when we do the approval of the agenda, do we need to mention that that's also gonna be moved to May 13th?
No, I can do that when it comes up.
Okay.
Because that's just a nomination.
Okay,
She has discretion.
we'll give her that
Do I have
discretion.
discretion on it?
Yes, you do.
Two discretions in one
discreet.
meeting. Wow.
Wow, two discretionable items. Then we have consideration and action for the bid for City Hall build-out.
That was the bid that we received a couple months ago now, on March the 8th. And the low bidder was Lichty Commercial Construction, $265,000 for the room improvements and $30,000 for the window replacement. And because of the conversations we've had with Gwinnett Tech and others, this is something we need to move on if we're going to do. So that's why it's on the agenda for tonight, and I'm recommending approval of the low bidder, which is
Which I
Lichty.
just wondered, since we're concerned about, getting that classroom space finished ASAP. I mean, I realize that things like plumbing and HVAC and electrical, that'll all have to be done at once, but could the actual finish work, could you prioritize that and do the classroom space first to perhaps get that done?
I would leave that up to the contractor
Yeah.
and.
And I think
As
we're
far as
good
timing,
because, and Clower Garage Works will still be there.
and as far as that go, trades typically go in first. Your electrical will rough in, your HVAC, your plumbing will rough in.
Right.
And then you can
the
start on
finish
your,
work.
your rough in of your
That's
your
what I just
walls
said,
and stuff.
isn't it?
Yeah, but they,
Glad you all know.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're given the
Yeah.
date we need to have the classrooms
Okay,
done.
okay, I just thought
I mean, I think they can work to
perhaps that was
as-
something we should.
And several of those windows in
Prioritizing.
that area will have to be replaced. We should have a sample window in downstairs. It's already a broken window. Probably, hopefully early in May or the middle of May, so we'll be able to have an example for it.
And then we've got on our second read for the Gwinnett County's animal control ordinance. I haven't heard anything about that, so I'm assuming that'll just move along. And then we have the unsolicited advertising ordinance, 2019-05. Any questions on that? Did you have?
Yeah.
Is it-
You've got it.
Yeah, Chuck's got an updated handout there.
And the issue, I remember at last work session, you just asked us to extend the culpability from the person who's throwing it to yard to whatever entity is instructing them to do so. So that's the red line component.
Were we able to figure out a way to?
At least with corporations, we can.
It's still gonna require someone getting caught in the act of throwing things out.
Okay, hang on a second.
Is this the same as the email that you sent out?
There's a red portion of that that's updated. It's highlighted in red, there's nothing that's different from the emails.
Here's a picture of a AJC Sunday supplement that's been thrown out. I've got 8 or 10 of them here on Street DeVille, and they did not magically appear. Is the corporate entity not culpable if their material has clearly been sprinkled amongst the city?
I think they are. You know, I think
Because God only knows when these things miraculously drop out of the sky.
it was just getting the guy who's throwing them out. You know, you're gonna have to see him. in
We-
order to
we
convict
have
him.
to
We
see
still
him?
have to see him even though it's
No,
clear.
you're not gonna have to see, in order to convict him
No, yeah.
of
No.
participating.
No, we-
The information in it will probably be enough evidence for the court to make a finding against the people who produced
You
it.
know, just as an example, I typically, when I walk our dog,
Pick 'em up.
I pick them up. And yesterday, of course, they threw them out Sunday.
Oh, ours just.
I bet at least 50%, if not more, were in the street.
Exactly.
Not in the driveways like that, in the street.
So we need to catch that guy, cause he obviously has
He
bad
doesn't
aim.
throw
This
well.
one's in the driveway.
Whoever's in my neighborhood's pretty good.
There was one in the middle of my cul-de-sac.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how, I mean, it was like he
Yeah.
opened the door
I mean,
and
they're,
just dropped it out the window.
I got a better arm than that.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay. That is it for the regular meeting, so we'll move to the,
And this comes to our municipal court.
Yes, sir.
any correspondence?
There is, but I'll save it for my project list.
Okay. City attorney's report,
Nothing to note.
but we do need exec session.
We do have some things to report on executive session, yes.
Okay, billboard agreement. Who's gonna?
Take that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I emailed you all last week a copy of the draft. That is Clear Channel. The red line is from Clear Channel. There was a good bit more red line, but those were all easily acceptable things. The main things I left red line were just things I wanted everyone to be aware of. Key takeaways, I know in the email, is that they only are going to be required to do one sign during the first year, and then they have an extended period of time to remove the other and convert the other signs. And then also the issue with transferability were the two issues. I know Dave had some concerns, but wanted to kind of get everyone's feel and to any of those changes and see if there was anything that really gave anyone real heartburn. They did remove the venue provision that we had put in to make it litigated in Gwinnett. I don't think that's a real deal breaker for us. So it's nice to have, but Clear Channel is going to be, they're a registered agent. They probably actually have a registered agent in Gwinnett, as most people do, so.
Where would they go? Where could they go? To
Well,
litigate.
most likely wherever their registered agent is, it's probably going to be in Fulton or Gwinnett, one or the other.
Probably the their preference would be to try and do federal district court. That's the restriction. That's the benefit of that clause, is we get them into state court where the speech issue is less restricted from our standpoint. And, so we're clearly better off with that restriction because of the way the courts interpret. And then they're stipulating themselves to the state court, not federal review.
How do you feel about increasing that time for the second one to 4 years?
That's the part that I want you to see. I mean, that's the troubling part, is it's delaying the replacement of the billboards for a substantial period of time.
That seemed a little long.
It is long. And this is a counter. We put out a version, this is really just the second time through. We could obviously go back and shorten those time periods.
And then I'm not sure I like the part about them being able to, if they sell a board without our approval, then the other party, it said the other party agrees to the terms of this agreement. And then you said it concerns us because we have built-in additional terms such as getting PSAs on the boards and things like that. That was a concern to me.
That one may be, as long as we record our agreement and the buyer is aware of it and there's a formality to that, they will, we would still, I think Chuck's point is that Clear Channel has a lot of boards that they were offering to do, I-85 boards. The buyer may not have access to that number. It's not that they won't do PSAs on the boards that are in the city that they would be buying. It would be other places. The negotiation really gives you access for public service stuff beyond the scope of just the city. And so it's just heads up, this could be transferred to somebody. But this board would still be subject to, public service announcements. So it does cause a change in what I described to you.
Can we go from 4 years to 2 years?
Yeah, that's what I was
Does
thinking.
everybody think about it?
And do you want to go back to the state court, the Gwinnett?
I would, because they could say, well, a registered agent is in Massachusetts. And we're done. Then it becomes more expensive to defend it than it is worth it.
Okay. 2 years in Gwinnett
2
County.
years in Gwinnett County.
2 years, Gwinnett.
Just to give you a little more information, we met with the Clear Channel. I guess he might have been an engineer,
No, he's
just a site guy.
the same guy we met with at the meeting.
Brian?
Yeah, same
Okay.
guy. I think he's just a representative for them.
But they are studying their ability to move the sign at the market, move it back to where the pole is not visible and have a true flag sign. So they've got to go out and do some borings so they know how, they've got to go, I think they said they needed to go 23 feet deep. So they're working on it. No response at this time.
Code enforcement procedures and issues. Jason, I think I
Another hand.
emailed everybody about this, that Jason and Butch and I had a meeting to discuss, what code enforcement's doing on a day-to-day type basis. What's their plan of action, and then what kind of cases they're working, and so just some other things came up during that meeting that it did for, I can't remember the last time that council actually talked to planning and code enforcement about what our priorities are. I think it was, back probably 8 years ago. So a good time to kind of get an update on what is happening so everybody understands. And then also, Jason, I think is gonna hit a couple of the hot button issues that they have so that we can provide feedback to them so that code enforcement knows what our priorities are. How hard do we want them to work certain cases, or do we not want them to work certain cases, or something in between? Jason?
Yeah, so, thank you, Mayor. Basically, the first sheet is just kind of the history, because I've known it since 2006, on who was responsible. And kind of go through the time period. You had a part-timer back in 2006, and then the quality of life unit was formed under the police department for 3 years. The recession happened, so kind of moved to planning with 2 part-time officers, which happened to be John and myself, beside our work as planners and zoning administrators. And that went on to, I think, the better part of 2014, when we went digital with our software, and you can kind of see as the caseloads picked up when we started really recording everything, to where we are now, which is, you know, at 60 hours with one full-time officer, but only 30 hours of that is dedicated to quality of life, and then 1 part-time officer, Officer Green, who's been there since 2014, and kind of where caseloads are at now. We're usually right at 1,000 plus a year. That's anything that's, you know, called in. So the next page kind of goes over the complaints that we get the most, and the corresponding maps. There's some percentages on the back. You can really dive into those. But grass and weeds, parking in the grass, yard, or not on a hard surface, trash and refuse, which includes tree debris if you count number 5, and then unauthorized vehicle, which is junk cars, stuff that's not tagged, that's in the state of disrepair. Those are the top 5. And if you just kind of look at the map, you can see where the concentrations are if you look in. And then, you know, right now our protocol has been the same as when it pretty much was started. Is we're probably 90 to 95% complaint driven. We get a complaint, whether it be the web, anonymous, however it comes in, that's generated into Citizen Serve, which is our electronic program that we use to manage code enforcement. And then 5% are probably self-initiated things such as signage, and when you roll up on a street and you have a complaint for parking in the yard, you know, you can't just necessarily get that one person, you gotta sweep the street. Typically that's what happens, everybody gets a notice and to comply. So right now, that's how we have to operate, really, given, you know, the 60 hours to chase down 100 or 1,000 to 1,200 cases. You gotta just keep moving, and procedure has always kind of been the same. You get an NOV or a verbal warning the first time, and then it progresses from there as we work with you to comply. You can get extensions on time. Once you recognize once the property owner or the tenant recognizes the violation, we work with them to get it done, as long as they continue to move forward, however long it can be, if it's reasonable. If there's no move towards compliance, typically that's when it goes to the citation phase, but at that point, there's already, you know, there's been several warnings, and we're just at a point where we can't do anything anymore, so it goes to the red. So a few discussion items as far as, you know, is the staffing sufficient for mayor and council's quality of life goals, and with those extra hours or extra resources could come some more proactive type enforcement, where you actually took a neighborhood and drove down the street and maybe did one round of, you know, hey, this is what we saw, we're going to be here in 2 weeks, these are the things you need to work on, whatever those points may be. We saw, you know, when the market crashed, we saw a lot of stuff that we had to work on. And just by having a more robust economy, a lot of those things kind of clean themselves up, but there's still, you know, plenty of opportunity out there if we wanted to go that route. And then just kind of going with what we saw in the top 5 is the parking surfaces. And this is something we need to think about for the UDO when we're going to look at these different things. As you see, these older neighborhoods are transitioning, and families are staying longer, and kids are coming home. You're getting to the point where you've got a single driveway and like 6 cars. So the cars can maybe stack in there at once, but then they can't move. So people naturally start parking off to the side. So it starts to create that issue. Well, the only remedy now for the most part is a concrete driveway, and most of the time, if it's a renter or even an owner, I mean, concrete's expensive, you're talking anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 to add some additional spaces, so, you know, that's why we're kind of trying to figure out what can we do between concrete and just parking on the grass that gives the people more spaces to park, but keeps the yard nice too. And if you look at some of the pictures, you can see some of the grandfathered gravel, how the weeds grow into it, becomes an issue. We had another person that put gravel down and then put mulch on top of it. That's not code compliant, but it definitely looks better. You still have the problem with the weeds. And then on the next page, you have one that we approved for an alternative pavement type, which is actually the cobblestone with a nice edging, and they keep it clean and weed free and doesn't kick rocks out onto the roadway. And then one where they actually install professional pavers, which is not necessarily what we're suggesting, but just showing you kind of the different options that you have. And those issues aren't gonna go away, in my opinion, they're only gonna get worse. You see it on North Road, you see it anywhere with just small driveways, and then the number of cars is increasing, so. However, I just wanted to give you guys this to kind of marinate on and think about before we get to the UDO on how you kind of want to address some of these things, and just, and start looking when you're out. Take a look and see, what you like, what you don't, but the issues are there. I mean, obviously, it's the number, I think it was the number 3 complaint, we get a lot of those, and it doesn't look good when there's ruts in the yard, and there's mud all over the driveway, and then it gets in the street, and then it causes an erosion issue over and over and over, so that's one of the biggest ones. Grass and weeds is pretty easy, just cut your grass and that one goes away, but something else too that you've seen kind of crop up is Snellville doesn't allow any kind of metal structures. I think it's because when you used to go to Lowe's and buy a $200 shed, and it's that sheet metal would rust in like a year and a half or two, it's falling apart, so the correction was to go to wood or siding or something that was more robust. Well now, you can kind of see in the second picture, they've got these pre-painted, powder-coated aluminum or steel sides that can be priced or can be color matched to your dwelling. And the durability of them are usually superior to any wood product, and they don't require repainting, and they look a lot better than, you know, what I believe the provision was for no metal originally. So that's something else that we'd like to maybe consider using as a building material. These are prefabricated, so basically they just come onto the property, get a permit for the location, and then put them together. You know, there's not a lot of real construction going on, and they seem to be durable. This is one that's up in the city somewhere. It's not really supposed to be. The carport too, we see that a lot. People want, you know, a lot of times our garages are getting converted, people aren't using them, and they want to have something over their vehicle to protect it, but right now we require basically a 3-sided dwelling made of brick, stone, or some kind of siding, basically another accessory dwelling unit, which again, the price goes up, and a lot of people aren't able to do that. So I've seen some little fabric things around town every now and then, you know, that you get at Harbor Freight where people are parking under, and we get those, but, you know, the county allows those metal ones if they're in the side or rear yard. They don't allow them out front. If you had a side entry garage or side entry driveway, they allow those same material, powder coated, pre-manufactured, not tin, and not something that, you know, is coming out of a box for $200 from Lowe's or something more substantial. So just some things to think about that we see out there a lot that aren't necessarily going away, that are continuing to come through. So those were the things, you know, I mean, anything you guys have to add as far as code enforcement goes. You know, our guys right now are really good. They manage a lot of cases. A lot of complex cases too, because there's not, all of them aren't as simple as knocking on the door and asking somebody to move their car. We get into these commercial situations like the pavilion, and you gotta go find people. And it's been a benefit too, the chief, you know, helps us, he provides the vehicles. They have basically the tools they need, being police officers, to do a lot more thorough job than we did as just code enforcement officers. So, and the network behind them as far as safety goes. So I feel like that part of it has been a benefit, because you see somebody show up in a squad car, seems to get a little more attention. And they're, you know, they're nice, personable people too, so it's not like they're over there beating people up, they're just making education and then, you know, mediation is pretty much how it goes.
And one thing to keep in mind when we're talking about the hours that the officers are putting in and how much they're able to be proactive versus reactive, that they drive down the street and pick up, you know, proactively and see 4 or 5 code violations and they stop and talk to all of those people, their job's not done. You know, of course, if it's just grass cutting, then hopefully it's just, hey, you need to cut your grass, I'm coming back in a week. They come back, see it's done, and the case is closed. But sometimes it's, we gotta look to see who the owner is, and then we've gotta do some research, because maybe it's a rental and the owner's not home or not here, you know, those kinds of things. So that's time not out on the street, just looking for things.
For
So-
cases that go to court, they have a thick file.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of paperwork that is required to be successful. And I think we have a judge now who will be a little more, a little tougher.
And that's part of the problem. There's been cases in the past where, okay, you said he cleaned it when they didn't, and it's dismissed.
And we're not seeing that anymore. You know, from what I've heard, it's been a lot more with people that have been obviously, you know, belligerent to at least try. I mean, just as long as you're trying, you know, nobody's getting put out on the street. It's just as long as you're trying to work with them as much as you can.
Yeah, I think when things finally get to court, it's been a while.
Yeah.
And there's a clear reason why they're in court versus, it's not the second time an officer goes out there and they get a ticket to appear in court. So, well, the reasoning behind this is so that everybody can give their thoughts and opinions on what we need to be doing with code enforcement. Is Jason and the team, are they on the right track? Do you think we need to be moving a little bit different direction, or?
Well, I have a question. The picture of the double garage with the shed on the side and the flagpole clearly isn't compliant with our zoning ordinance. When we come across somebody who's either building a non-compliant structure or doing unpermitted work,
This one's in line to get a variance, so basically we put that off until made the decision to see where the UDO goes. And if we allow these materials, then he'd be okay. The location is fine, the size is fine, but the materials aren't fine. And it's out there, I think it's on Skyland and that side street before Springdale or Mac.
yeah, the location really doesn't bother me. I'm just curious, are officers able to, if they see something like this that's in construction?
Yeah, we stop them.
Okay.
And then
because-
at that point, it's either a variance or a tear down, and then that's when it gets, you know, that's when you start, you know, trying to work through everything.
And-
This guy has been fine, it's been.
Yeah, I thought our accessory structure ordinance limited the size to much, much smaller than this.
Well, you'd be surprised, you get up to
Because-
750 square feet, and that's 75 by 10 or 30 by 40, and that's maybe
Okay.
40 by 30, so as far as, he took 2 old sheds down to put that up. And,
Yeah, no, it looks nice, it's professionally done. I know in the past, there've been people in my neighborhood who wanted to build a second garage or something like that, and they were thwarted, and it eventually moved out of the neighborhood because it had to be attached, had to.
Right,
they-
so those are the things we need to kind of
Right.
look at, and I agree, because there's a need for people to, especially with, you know, stuff and storage and, you know, the aesthetics are good now, it's not
Or if we live in a
necessarily that
670
Well, and I know with parking on the grass, I mean, I hear what you're saying with allowing a car or two to be able to do that, but I know we've got an issue right now in the neighborhood where a house just all of a sudden in the last 2 months, now they've had cars in the driveway and that's fine, but now they started parking like big trailers, covered trailers, 2 trailers and a truck, and then they've got the shell of a race car out in the driveway covered, you know, with a tarp. And, you know, so it's obviously not just residents parking there. They're doing all of this essentially race car activity there at the house. And so it's like, yeah,
Could be a hobby, and how you control that is where you allow those. Right now, trailers aren't even required to be, the way the code is written on a hard surface, so, but not in the side yard. I think it has to, or in the front yard, it has to be in the side or rear. So we just, that's stuff, wherever you guys want those to go, we have to dictate the code. Because, I mean, an RV can be off a hard surface too.
Mhm.
It can be in the backyard or the side yard, so,
Mhm.
you know, that's where we need to dial in where we want everything. What's the, you know, do you want the big stuff back? Do you okay with a couple cars on a kind of semi-modified pad? How do you want to do it? Because Gwinnett allows gravel off the main driveway. It has to be edged. It has to be, you know, basically where the weeds aren't coming through. So they regulate it. We just work concrete or
or
nothing.
nothing, yeah. And I remember when we changed to that.
Yeah, and I think it's a great code, but it's not, if they don't put them in the driveway, they're gonna put them on the street. So now
Yeah.
they're having all these issues with these street parkers, so a lot of the neighborhoods in Snellville weren't designed to accommodate sidewalks, so the streets are a little wider. But still, you start stacking them up on both sides, which is allowed as long as they're parked in the right direction and not causing a traffic hazard. Then you know, to me, that's just as big of an issue as far as aesthetics go too. So we just kinda gotta figure out where the happy medium is.
Okay. Well, now that we've started the discussion, why don't y'all follow up with Jason as things occur, or talk amongst yourselves, and where we wanna go, and we'll try to get this defined a little bit better. Maybe in our next May meeting, we'll allocate a little more time and see if we can't do some things to button down the codes. Okay, thank you, Jason. Okay, the Georgia Smart Cities Grant Opportunity.
This is a grant opportunity that, for $50,000 with a match, that is very timely in my mind. Eric's done a little research on it. I'll just kind of briefly go over it for everybody.
Just to keep it short for your timing, Mayor and council members, Austin and I went to a little training about 2 weeks ago that was relatively helpful. This is a grant opportunity. They provide $50,000 in cash funds that we can use for a variety of smart technology and looking forward purposes. It funds technical assistance programs for states of any, or cities of any size in Georgia, so we do qualify. It's a competitive one-year grant. The total actually budgeted grant would probably be near $100,000. They put in 50. We have to match it with at least 10,000 in cash, and then the other 40 can be in-kind or like-kind kinds of resources. The monies can be used by the applicants to explore, study, or plan for the use or development or deployment and integration of smart technology in the community. That can include traffic studies and some of the things we want to be able to do for the town center, which is one of the things I started looking at, so we could use it that way. It also can be used to partner with a Georgia Tech person that might help us do some planning and working with our local schools on that second floor of the building and some smart technology that there. So it has several different purposes. So without getting longer, we are getting short in our meeting. I'll entertain your questions, but I think it's a good opportunity. It's about a 12 to 15 page grant with some support. I think we can get it done. It's due May 3rd. And the other thing just to say to you, it does require that we partner with one or more Georgia Tech research professors. And we've already reached out to a few that are interested. So we do have that interest. Then what happened, this would be the second year these grants have been awarded. What they found last year is as the grant engaged with the 4 communities, and I can provide those to you if you'd like to see them, but Georgia Tech then also brought other resources to the table, like they assigned some interns to the project as it went along and other things. So.
Cool. So if everybody's okay, then Eric will spend some time getting that grant application.
And Mayor, I would like to suggest that then you just add approval of the grant submission on the regular budget, so we can make a little publicity thing out of it tomorrow. We can say the city is.
The mayor needs to sign a letter committing to
The
that.
mayor needs
Okay.
to sign a letter committing to it, yeah. So if you would add that then to your agenda, just as an approval point.
Okay, so at the approval of the agenda, whoever's gonna make that motion, if you can amend the agenda to add, we'll call it new business item E.
E.
Smart Communities Grant Authorization. Authorize the mayor to sign a letter of
Application.
submittal.
Well, we need just a letter that the city is actually committed to the 50,000 that is our piece. And they want that from an executive position. And David will allow us to work in looking at shuttles and that kind of thing as well.
Okay.
As well as continue the research that some of the interns that we've got working already doing something.
Yeah, the relationship is the big part of the value there.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, microtransit program, we're gonna move to next meeting.
Yes, we had to move our meeting. The meeting is with the county on Wednesday afternoon now, late Wednesday afternoon.
Butch was planning on giving us an update on the program from Lewis Cooksey, but.
I don't have the data yet from the county. I'll get that Wednesday and we'll talk about continuing, how we might continue the program.
That ends the 30th of April, doesn't it?
And then the project update.
Real quickly, on the town center, we do have a need for an executive session. One quick item there. As far as the plan and design work, we stay in touch with the county. No change until we have some movement on property in the town center. I think this the quality of life discussion is very good timing. One of the many things that we'll need to address in the UDO discussion and tailor the UDO to address some of our code enforcement issues as well as other areas. That's going to require probably a 2-hour mayor and council work session. City marketing, Brian is working with planning on a code enforcement flyer. There's a lot of other things going on in the PIO's office, and a couple have to do with an item down here at the 78-124. We'll go over that in a second. UDO draft is in hand. I know Rich Ettinger with Clark Patterson has to do some work from an engineering perspective there on the document, but the staff is editing. We're going to come up with, I try to highlight hot point areas that would be of extra concern to the mayor and council. We'll have that list before we go into a work session. The roundabout, we have a need for an executive session item there. The county is looking, at the completed roundabout, there's some landscaping issues where trucks are getting into the grass and the mud. County's looking at digging that out and concreting that, putting stamped concrete there. The award for the Fars Ridgedale roundabout is scheduled for the May 7th Board of Commissioners meeting. So, and they are working on the demo of the one home that has to come down at the intersection. 78 and 124. You've probably seen the signs out there that say May 1st. There's going to be a traffic pattern change. We have a meeting in the morning with Robert Moon, but this is the correspondence that we received. We have a tentative date of 5/1/19 for a partial shift on Highway 78. This will affect 124 scenic highway traffic also. This date is subject to change depending on weather, as always. On 5/1/19, Pittman Construction will shift all westbound 78 traffic onto the new alignment. You've probably seen the paving that's been going on, the new lanes. That's the shift that he's talking about. Eastbound will stay where it is for a while longer. Southbound traffic on 124 that turns to go west on 78 will also use the new alignment. You've probably seen the turn lane there that they're working on. Any traffic on 124 northbound will no longer make a left turn onto 78 West. That is the plan, that's the larger plan. That turn was always going to be removed. There will be no left turns into the businesses. Everything will be right in and right out only, just like the plan suggested to begin with. Pittman will have all signing and markings in place. Temporary traffic signal heads at 78 and 124 will be shifted to the north as well. We plan to have the overhead structure in place by the end of May. They'll have traffic control, but we're also going to work with Roy and PD at least for a short period of time during that pattern change. That's really the first sign of a major change that we're moving towards still completion in November. Another piece of very good news, the engineer, the contractor, and the state, they're setting up a public meeting. We've always talked about a town hall. This would be a public meeting, probably at First Baptist Church, right around May 23rd, where we'll have a chance to go over everything. So that's pretty good, some progress there, but there will be some effect on the public.
Butch, can
that's
I,
for sure.
just 2 seconds? The Henry Clower improvements, both up by McDonald's and down by...
McDonald's?
Yeah, what did I say? McDonald's?
Oh, go ahead.
And by First Baptist. It was my understanding those were going to be done so people could bypass the bottleneck.
Yes.
And they seem to have come to a screeching halt. They don't seem to care one bit whether...
That's one thing I
help
asked
them with the
Robert. If you're not gonna allow that westbound turn lane, you better have those improvements done by May 1st also. I didn't get an answer on that. That's why we're meeting in the morning.
Okay.
So Clower those improvements need to be done and, to make it much more convenient there. We're moving people there. So I'll let you know what they say. But that should work. And really, there's not a lot of update on the final ones. SDS, no change. SPLOS program collection still going well. They are their executive session item for one of their projects. Budget and planning still moving towards regular adoption dates and ordinance development. I mean, we have new ordinances every meeting date, it seems like. So. And just, we have our historic markers in that identify the benches out in the back of City Hall. I think everybody has been very positive about those so far. So take a look at them on your way out. It's a good information on those stones.
Okay. Given the time, is there anything that we have to talk about in exec session before our meeting?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we'll come back after for the exec session.